You have no choice. Hey, Malekith. I'm just happy that in this version I can actually equip weapons. Because I don't think you could. I think you could only equip blasters while you had the wetsuits on, and I don't know. I could be wrong. Ooh, we got an hourglass. Why is there loot over here?
Useless.
The shoals are going to take a while for us to clear through. You know, just a little bit of time. Shit. There we go. That's one more down. It's very similar to fighting dragons, which I certainly have plenty of experience with. Slowly but surely. Alright, there we go. Okay, this is a dragon shark, so at least we're taking out a high tier one. Assuming that I don't fuck it up. Okay, we did not fuck it up. We can save this. We've now cleared 2% of the enemies in this zone. I'm just gonna dive this one. Fuck. Ooh, that was close. Okay, we got that one. This is mid-tier. If this hits me, there's a decent chance that it's to give Silria. Alright. 2 more down. I don't know where the biggest packs of these are and how big those packs are. So hopefully we don't run into anything too insane here.
Too easy. Be really nice if Severia could actually equip her weapon, but given how lenient it is, giving me access to my jewelry and shit, and my gauntlets for that matter, don't think I'm going to complain too much. Okay, it's cleared out. Not to mention my weapons. Like, in vanilla, these are weak enough that, like... Well, not only are they weak enough, but also, like, buffs are strong enough that, like... Just the heroism damage means that if you're just punching these things to death, you can't see stream. What? What's going on? Looks correct from here.
Oddness. So look, it looks fine on the website on my end. Ah, weird. Did anything go wrong here? 7 minutes ago. Wow, 7 minutes ago I had a disconnect? That was so early in the stream. Wait, I've been live for 50 minutes? How did that happen? Oh boy, this is going to be a long... An hour ago, it gave me another thing that's just the same notification of checking out overlays for my Diablo 4 stream from 2 weeks ago. What the hell? These ads are out of control. Hey, Asher Kitty. Oh, fuck! I forgot where I was when I tabbed out. I just saw a paralyzed shark in front of me and I was like, oh, okay. And then didn't think that maybe. Let's see. 40 armor. I got the wetsuits on. Let's see. Luckily, one of the patches has made it more lenient, so I can use most, but not all of my weapons. And I can use thingamabobber. I can use all of the stuff on the jewelry. I cannot remove them now. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Yep. And that does also mean, as a consequence, that I'm not getting any benefit from my armor skills. But because they changed it so that you could equip this kind of stuff, it's not as huge a difference, and I also have the ability to equip my weapons. But like if you look at, that's also true because you can't cast your buffs while you're down here. You can't cast spells in underwater. But that isn't a huge difference, even for me, because if you can't cast your buffs underwater, but you can cast them in the Lincoln, and if you leave the Lincoln, you will keep the buffs that you have, I believe. So you can just run to the Lincoln or swim to the Lincoln, cast your buffs, and then leave the Lincoln with your buffs on. It's not a huge difference. It's just a little bit of an extra hassle. But the durability difference is night and day. We are so squishy right now. I should actually probably just turn off Day of Protection in favor of just pure water resistance. Yeah, these sharks are going to be a huge pain in the ass. They're just so slow. And unfortunately, I'm not really in the mood for them right now. I really like dragon fights. Like, generally speaking, this is like a fun thing for me. I'm just not really in the mood for it. Because I'm feeling antsy. Because we're so close to the end. Like, we're close to the end of the entire run. So... I'm feeling antsy. It's not going to take that one to clear these out. And the paras are going to help a lot. Go. Spell scroll. Let's see. But it is very funny. Like, I do really feel like this was the section where the developers were like, we put blasters into Might and Magic 6, and basically nobody wanted them and nobody used them. How can we force them to use blasters? How can we get them, how can we jostle them out of their, you know, their cool, you know, weapon and armor sets that they've enjoyed the entire game. Make them do what we want. I know. We're gonna go east. We're gonna save. Because we've split these up a bit. We're gonna try to get this one. I needed to head over to it to tag it quick, because if I didn't tag it, I was going to run into a problem. Okay. Fuck! Where the hell am I? Oh. Got my... Alright, we got this parrot. Whew. Slowly but surely, we're going to whittle our way through these. The funny thing is that if not for the fact that preservation is tied to Sylvia staying conscious, I could probably just kind of plow through most of these. Because they're doing not quite like a full HP bar with each hit. So, like, I could take 2 of these at a time fairly comfortably, except for the fact that the tier 2s can just hit Sylvia once and cause a death, like, automatically. My party's fundamental strategy of having, you know, a character who can pick everyone up, and then, just for shits and giggles, a spare character who can also pick everyone up, is massively impaired by preservation being tied to a single party member, where it means that that party member, who is presumably going to be, you know, your healer, if they go down, then it's automatically GG. So having a spare healer is less relevant as a result. Okay. Piranha, shut-a-doo-doo. Go. Alright, so we just cleared 3 of them at once, which is fine. We've cleared the entire bottom of the area, which is good. There's also a Heroism pedestal, which is extremely useful for... Look, don't countermand me, Ashcore. God, there's so many sharks in this pack. Oh, God. Ugh. Let's see. We're getting attacked by the ones over there. Not all of them, though. So I'm actually fairly... Shit, that was close. I'm fairly content to get them separating out like that. Okay, we have one separated out here. This is one of the dragon sharks. Alright. Easy peasy. And we only have 15 more in line of sight right now. So how many have we killed so far? 10? It's like, how many have we killed? Well, about as many as there are in this pack that we're currently fighting. We're gonna get there. It's gonna happen. Unfortunately, that one's retreating back, so... That one's not going to stay separated from the rest of the pack. We'll save this. Let's go. Okay, clearing out the sharks. Okay. Okay, interesting. I can't actually get to them. Fuck. Ugh, sharks. Why do you insist on sucking? It was perhaps a mistake to do Might and Magic 7 last, actually. I really like Might and Magic 7 overall, but this is probably my least favorite zone in the series. Even with it being like like massively improved by letting me equip weapons and shit like that, it is still a huge pain in the ass. The thing that's interesting is that I actually think this place would not be that bad if it was in the middle of the game. The thing that's worst about this zone is actually the fact that it's so late in the game, and it brings like the pacing kind of like crashing to a halt. Now, I get that you're really supposed to not engage with this zone almost at all, and that you're supposed to basically just skip it. Like, realistically, you're supposed to come in here, go, oh, well, I'm not going to fight a bunch of sharks naked. Or go, I'm going to just equip a blaster and blow everything up. But either way is a viable means of dealing with this in a very fast way, right? Which, the second of which, the blaster strategy would be made a lot more reasonable if the enemies in this were not using projectiles. I think it's very silly that the sharks use projectiles. I think they should be melees. They're literally sharks. They're sharks that can't bite you. So, like, having the blasters feel good because you have the ability to fly around and fight sharks that basically can't, like, fight back. Because they can't reach you. I could see that being fun. Like, as a little bit of, like, power fantasy for the blasters. If you decided to bother to fight the local wildlife when you could just ignore them completely. On the plus side, there's a big open area here that doesn't have any sharks in it at all. I say as I run into a bunch of sharks. Okay, so... But yeah, I mean, we're maybe like a third of the way through the zone now. Potentially. But yeah, for the rule set of my runs, it really would be very nice to have this zone earlier in the game. Like, it wouldn't be bad. Like, interestingly enough, the place that this probably most effectively fits is in the same position that the other place where you fight a shit ton of dragons is, which is God, what is that place called? Dragon Sand. You know, of all the names I could forget, this style of gameplay I think works pretty well for Dragon Sand in terms of where Dragon Sand is in the plot, because Dragon Sand is probably the most crazy and difficult area of the game that you're actually gonna like. I mean, it's kind of just the craziest and most difficult area of the game, right? Just generally. There's so many fucking dragons. The energy damage is something that you can't mitigate in any way. Like, the meteor swarms from the demons is obviously not, trivial to deal with. But for typical gameplay, the demons aren't that crazy compared to compared to the dragons. Because by that point in the game, you're doing a lot of flying, and the demons are not nearly as dangerous if you're flying as an energy dragon is. The gold dragons. So yeah, I think that makes sense. The issue is that they already have that zone in this game, but they do it a little differently in this game in a way that I think makes it not fill quite the same niche. Land of the Giants is definitely a place that you're not necessarily meant to clear everything, but it's also a place where the fundamental setup of the area is designed so that you're kind of meant to have to interact with it a bit, right? Similar to how the hive being on top of a mountain that's higher than the flight cap means that you have to get close enough to the ground to deal with the meteor swarms. The height of the mountain peak in Land of the Giants means that you do kind of have to deal with it. So weirdly enough, I feel like Land of the Giants makes the most sense as the equivalent of Sweetwater in terms of where you go in the plot, where it's like it's the last thing that you do, because it really is that kind of a zone where it's like the zone is kind of set up in such a way that you are encouraged to interface with it on a direct level. Whereas, Dragon Sand is a big empty sand space full of enemies that fly around and use ranged attacks that can probably obliterate you, right? Which is kind of like what this place is. So weirdly, I think that if you reversed the positions of these two parts of the plot, I think it would make more sense in terms of the way that you interact with it. Because by the time you get to Sweetwater, you have blasters, and I think that it makes a degree of sense to do it. But this also is like a, part of this might have just been like a cost-saving measure, where they didn't really have any cheap, easy ideas they could do for the shoals that wouldn't cost a lot of money and time that they didn't have. So that might be part of why the shoals is as, decrepit as it is. And why they put it as a don't even bother. Yeah, like the Sharks should do melee damage, right? Like the Sharks being melees, I think makes more sense, both for what they're doing with the zone as a zone that you're kind of supposed to just pass through and not interact with. I don't think that you're meant to think about the shoals, personally. Like based off of the level design of the shoals, the impression that I get from it is very much like this is like a flyover state. Like you're not staying here. This is a place that you are literally just flying through on your way to somewhere else. And the big thing is just figuring out where you're going. Not like, ooh, how do I interact with this stuff here, right? And you could just blast through it with a blaster, but you can do that with like everything after you get your first blaster from the Tolberti quest. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Like, especially if the Sharks... Like, one thing that would be fun, I think, would be if the Sharks moved really fast and you didn't. I think that could be fun. Like, there's fun stuff that you could do with this premise that would lead to a more interesting setup. Wow, that curved over the hill. No, it didn't.
There's a dragon shark over in the back that probably shot at me. It might have curved over the hill. I think they might have curved that over at me. Like they shot at me while I was up high, and then it went above the hill and then curved back down. Oh shit. God damn it. I didn't notice that they had gotten in range. I don't think it's a huge complaint. The shoals, because again, you can basically ignore the shoals completely and just not worry about it, and that's fine. I don't think that the shoals doesn't outstay its welcome. It lasts on a standard playthrough. It's going to last maybe 30 seconds if you want to do like the secret dungeon. It's gonna wait maybe a minute and a half. If you want to do the secret dungeon, then I think it takes maybe a minute and a half to swim over there and then swim to the thing. I think that Sweetwater works. Like, I think that Sweetwater accomplishes the objective, which is to look like a shattered wasteland, which they nail the aesthetic on that. Like there's like shattered buildings everywhere. So they nailed it on an aesthetic level, I think. Showed like the blight. And on a gameplay perspective, one thing that they did that I think is like an important thing of note, like it's not the biggest thing in the world, but the fact that the hive itself requires you to interact with the meteor swarms, right, is, I think, like they put that high elevation area where they put it with a bunch of enemies that are way below you but who can launch meteor swarms at you if you try to just fly straight to the hive. From my recollection, it's set up pretty well to demand engagement with the meteor swarm, which is the primary mechanic of the map. So Sweetwater, to me, feels very successful as a map. The same way that like Land of the Giants feels very successful as a map. I think they did a good job with Land of the Giants. The issue, there's balance considerations with Land of the Giants that I think are a problem, right? Like the Warlock quest requiring you to steal a fucking dragon egg is insane. That is an insane quest line. But despite how insane that quest line is, yeah, that's the puller, I guess. Yeah. So we're back to the start, and so like Land of the Giants, I think they did a really good job with, and Sweetwater, I think that they did a pretty good job with the aesthetic and the thing. And the aesthetic, I think, of the final area of 8, I think is pretty good. I think they got the aesthetic down. The enemy types in there are insane. Like, from a design perspective, like, it's kind of funny to have, like, a might and magic thing, where it's like, haha, half of these enemies are immune to magic and half of them are immune to physical, hee hee hee. But in practice, it's an enormous pain in the ass. Let's see. But also, why wouldn't you have 4 dragons if you're playing Might and Magic 8, right?
I still remember. I think that I'm trying to remember what other characters I had in my party. I think I basically just did like a vampire as my protagonist, and then like 4 dragons for most of the game. Not for most of the game. As soon as I got the ability to recruit dragons, I would immediately recruit them. I'd seek out the dragon caves to recruit the dragons, because when I was a kid, I was just like fucking obsessed with dragons. I loved dragons as a kid. These days I'm less into them. I still love the aesthetic. The dragon aesthetic is a good aesthetic, in my opinion. I think to a large degree, dragons are basically like very similar to vampires in terms of their like what they represent as a monster. Like, as a monster, dragons represent the feudal aristocracy, right? Like, that's what they are. Like, even when they're mindless monsters, they're still feudal aristocracy, right? Like, the very classic, I'm sitting on a hoard of gold, doing nothing with it, just having it exist. I'm literally sleeping on gold, is very, like, feudal monarch behavior. The, like, sacrificing women to them is very much very feudal monarch coded. The the randomly eating people thing is very feudal coded, right? So it's kind of interesting how, like, if you look at most monsters in like the Western canon, they're all just feudal nobles. At the end of the day, they're just feudal nobility. It's actually kind of an interesting dynamic, I think, because, like, I feel like a lot of modern monsters, like, if you look at zombies, for instance, like, a lot of modern monsters kind of represent, to a very large degree, poor people that are, like, and people who are generally powerless. But if you look at older monsters, almost every older monster is representative of the stereotypes and, like, associations with class and privilege, right? And I think it isn't until, like, the last 100 years that you started getting really a ton of monsters that are not that. Because, like, you've got things like the Morlocks, which definitely represent an underprivileged underclass, right? But, like, I'm trying to think of, like, monsters that are really popular in the West. Like, I think that there's in Asia, there's a lot of monsters that are, like, the result of women committing suicide, basically. That's, like, the origin point for, like, half of the, vampire adjacent things in Asia. But I guess you've got the like hag, I guess. Though I don't know, like in folklore, because like I don't think Baba Yaga is like considered to be. I don't think that Baba Yaga I would even consider to be like a monster, right? Like Baba Yaga, I think is like, I wouldn't say a folk hero, but isn't necessarily a folk villain either. I think there's like an in-between space there with Baba Yaga. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my understanding, is that Baba Yaga is kind of like a... like, does whatever weird shit that they do in the story, and sometimes what they do is useful to the protagonist, and sometimes it's very bad for them. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like... I'm trying to think of like classic monsters. Like, what are the classic monsters, right? Like really like classic stuff. Because even with like zombies aren't the monsters. Actually, like in the traditional sense, I think zombies are controlled by their master, right? Like zombies are a direct allegory for slavery, right? Like
that's no.
Like that's a very direct component of that. So I don't know a huge amount. I shouldn't comment too much on zombies as a like traditional folklore creature, because of the fact that I don't really know that much about it. I'm pretty certain that they are specifically an allegory for slavery, right? And by extension of that, I'm fairly certain that, like, the thing that is bad in a zombie story shouldn't be the zombie, right? It should be the thing that's creating the zombies. That's the thing that's bad in a zombie story.
We don't need this.
But I feel fairly confident in saying that. But there's a lot of move, I feel like, in the last... I don't know how long it's been, actually. I'm kind of curious how long it's been that, like, there's been this move toward the... like... The monster is this, like, tragic character as opposed to this horrifying character. I'm really over it. I saw a movie recently that had a premise that could honestly be like comedic horror, basically, where like, or like a dark comedy kind of deal. I don't even know how to describe necessarily the genre that it could fit in. But God, I don't even remember what the movie was called, so I don't even know what to say that I'm going to give spoilers for. Though they're not interesting spoilers, honestly. Like, I don't even know that I would like spoil the fact that the movie doesn't do anything interesting with its premise. I don't know. That seems like the kind of spoiler that I'd want to get, honestly. But there's a movie where the opening scenes of the movie are some dad
going nuts due to the fact that he's a banker. I don't know. It's some like, you know, financial crisis thing where this guy decides that he's going to kill his family and then himself or something like that, right? And I don't know why he's dragging his family into this business, but he decides to. So he kills his wife, and then he kidnaps his children into the woods somewhere, and then he's going to kill them in this like little cottage that he found that I think his family might have owned, question mark? Or maybe a friend of the family owned. I don't know who owns this cottage, but there's this cottage in the woods that I think he knew about in advance. It's not like he just stumbles on it. And he goes into this cottage in the woods, and he is going to kill his children, and then he gets murdered by a ghost. And then for like a few years, the ghost raises those kids, kind of like off screen. And then a relative of the children manages to track them down. Like they has had like a private investigator trying to track down what happened because nobody knows what happened to this guy. He just disappeared off the map after he killed his wife with his kids. And so this guy, after the police have just given up looking for this guy, is still, you know, hiring, you know, private investigators to track him down. And then the story is about mostly his fiance dealing with trying to like help raise kids who are not hers and are not her responsibility, but that she's taken on as a responsibility. And there's reasons why she's broadly responsible for them. I think he gets injured at some point during the plot fairly early, so that she just has to do everything. But regardless, it's a movie that you start out the movie with the ghost being very sympathetic because the ghost prevents the dad from killing the children, and then like basically raises them and protects them. And then when the kids get brought out, they are so they're still fucking haunted, right? The ghost follows them. And it's this interesting thing where for about half of the runtime of the movie, the ghost doesn't really do anything bad. Like, the ghost is just kind of doing stuff, like just hanging out, and like you've got some weird like shit with like the kids and stuff like this, and the ghost is just hanging out. And then like the last like 30 minutes of the movie turn a movie that could have like this interesting twist of like, oh yeah, actually these are the villains of the plot, right? Which they do establish the actual villains of the plot that are not the ghost. And the ghost is pretty much chill, actually. It's just that the ghost is protective of these kids, and like perceived aggression toward the children is not gonna fly, right? Like, that's an angle that could have made for a really interesting movie. They instead took the premise and in the end just fully butchered it. They fully butchered the premise and ended up with the like, they kind of ended the movie on the note of sometimes bitches be crazy, is the way that I would describe the fundamental like end point of the movie. And it's weak. It's really weak. The way that they ended the movie was very weak and extremely reactionary. And these things are related, right? The fact that they were reactionary directly interfered with the ability to do interesting stuff with the premise that they gave. It's also kind of funny because I feel like that's true for... There's so many horror movies that set up a premise that would really benefit from like a subversion of tropes. Because like a lot of horror tropes are like, ah, yes, you know, these people who have been like isolated and segregated from society, it's very sad and tragic that they have been isolated and segregated from society through no fault of their own. But now that they have been isolated and segregated from society, they are monsters now, and you must destroy them. And that's like kind of the premise of like a lot of horror. Like way more horror than you'd think fits into the premise fundamentally of, oh, it's so tragic that these bad things happened which turned this person into a monster. You should feel bad for them, but also they need to be destroyed. And we don't need to worry about the, you know, institutions and people who, you know, started this horror in the first place. That's not entirely true. Oftentimes the person who is responsible for starting the whole shenanigans also gets killed, usually by the ghost. But, or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a ghost. Anyway, I don't know how I got off on that the topic of just like disappointing horror movies, but horror movies are so consistently disappointing that it's always really interesting when you get like an actual interesting take from a horror movie. And one of the issues with horror movies that I find so frustrating is the fact that so many of them look like they're going to be one of those movies that has an interesting like take right up until like the last 10 minutes of the movie, and then they just go with the most generic stupid bullshit that like the resolution ends up being so stupid. I think that a lot of that is like unironically just like they get a cool screenplay and then they're like, okay, well, we got this cool screenplay, but you know, we don't want, you know, we don't want test audiences to be confused about who the bad guys are. So we'll just make the bad guys the monster, even when the monster is like unambiguously very like sympathetic. Like the most sympathetic character in the entire narrative will be the monster, and then it's like, yeah, but they're still a monster though. It's like, well, they're only a monster because you made them do the monster thing, you know, right at the end of the movie. Before that point, they were actually pretty fine, and I'm actually on board with the behavior that they exhibited, you know? This was fine, actually. I was on board with this. But, anyway. See, this is what happens when I'm forced to fight sharks for several hours. Forced. You know, someone stuck a gun to my head and is forcing me to fight these sharks. It's not like I could just leave at any time. It's not like I could just do whatever I want. It's not like this is my live stream and I can do whatever the fuck I want. These are not the case. I'm required, through no fault of my own. I didn't create the rule set. And I certainly don't break the rule set whenever it suits me to do so. There isn't a long, proud history of me just deciding, you know what, fuck it, I don't want to do this. Honestly, I do tend to just do the thing. I don't break the rules that often. But I do sometimes. It actually probably seems like I'm breaking the rules more often than I actually feel like I am, because I don't make the rule set super robust. Like, it's not like I'm competing with other people in my rule set, you know what I mean?
Like, it's not like I'm a speedrunner where it's like, okay, it's very important that when I say these are the rules, that these are explicitly the rules, and that I don't, like, have, like, oh, no consumables, but apples are fine. It's like, well, why are apples fine? Because, I don't know, they're chill. Apples are fine. Right? Like, if I'm doing, like, a speed run, and, like, there's a category there, there's, like, you know, people who give a shit, you know, what the specific ins and outs of the rules are, I would have to actually, like, set up the rule set appropriately. But luckily, that's not the world state that we live in. Okay, we're gonna just get this one solo. I say as I go straight in for an attack that's very likely to aggravate it. Luckily, it is stuck in a hanger, so we're fine. It's resetting back to its original position, which is an interesting behavior, and I don't really even know what triggers it. Like, I feel like it's tied to the enemy being active for some period of time while they're outside of their natural range, but this is actually in its natural range, so I don't know why this would be... Well, maybe it's not. Maybe those are from way further away than I think. One thing that's also kind of funny is that the homing attacks, for the most part, make it a little harder, but in some ways they do make it a little bit easier. The slight degree of homing that's on these is not sufficient to deal with my, like, fast movement that I have from flying. And as a result of that, because they're always going to veer toward me, there is it actually becomes fairly easy to deal with, because if I'm just moving in a horizontal fashion away from the shot, I'm almost certain to dodge it. Whereas if I'm going back and forth a decent bit, without any homing, I'm actually just as likely to run myself into its path as I am to get out of its path. But because they tend to home toward me, though they don't always do it, so I guess the fact that it's inconsistent in that regard does mean that it just kind of objectively does get a little bit harder overall. Occasionally, you will be saved by the bell, so to speak. But the inconsistency there does make it so that it's overall like, you can't rely on the idea that you're not going to get hit because you're not in the exact spot that you just were. Okay, we just activated Crossfire, which you don't necessarily want. We're hitting the one that's not low, in the hopes we can get both of them where we want them. Shit. Okay, well, that was very silly. Okay. Boop. Alright. Save it up. And moving right along. Let's see. I think we've probably cleared maybe like half the enemies in the area. We might have actually gotten a few more than that. few more than half, but I'm not clear on that. Ooh. That was pretty funny. All right, we got this one parried, which is great. Fuck. The fact that that wasn't homing saved me. Okay. Yeah, that little bit of trajectory compensation, I really appreciate it. It's an interesting mechanic. Like the homing in I think in 6 the homing was pretty perfect, right? Or was it just the precursor to this mod that had the perfect homing? Not perfect, but pretty, like the extremely powerful homing. I don't remember if it was in both this one and the in both Ma and the skills emphasis mod, or if it was just skills emphasis mod. But either way, we have gotten actually quite a few pearls here, which I guess makes sense. I mean, these sharks are pretty high in the food chain. I would imagine that they eat a lot of things that eat things that have pearls in them. And these pearls are actually pretty big. There might be clams big enough that these sharks are eating them. And the sharks aren't actually that big either. They're no dragon turtles for sure. Okay. Alright, so these are done. I don't think there's a chance that this thing is going to come out of para. Done and done. Save it up. How close are we? We've passed the 50% mark of the actual map, but the north side of this map is probably more densely populated anyway. I don't know that for sure, though. I'm not even sure if they bothered to pretty much populate the stuff that's north of the Lincoln. They might legitimately just have not bothered. Yeah, like Might Magic 7 can't be canon, right? Because at the end of Might Magic 7, they open up... They end the silence. Right? Like, no matter which ending you got in Might Magic 7, it cannot possibly be canon. I feel like I've had this conversation during this playthrough already, and somebody explained to me how the series as a whole handles Might Magic 7, but I don't remember. It is also very funny to think of, like, the light side versus dark side in this is kind of interesting, right? Because, like, in the light side ending, you reopen the portals and give yourself access to all of the weapons and power
of an interstellar galactic empire, right? And on the evil side, you make some blasters so you can conquer some shithole planet that hasn't gotten past the feudal age. And I feel like if you have any degree of ambition, you're gonna want to open the portal either way, right? Like, why would you want to just mass produce blasters? Do you not want medicine for, like, yourself? Right? Because you're evil, but you're not zombies. Like, you're not undead. They're not undead. They're not liches. They ally themselves with, like, the necromancers, but they themselves are not necromancers. So it's just this kind of bizarre element of, like, you know, evil is really dumb. You know? It's like, yeah, evil is kind of dumb, actually. It also does, you know, bring to heart, like, elements of sort of like the modern world that we live in, of, like, you know, oh yeah, you know, imperialism and things like that are fine, actually. That's chill. We don't need to look into that too deeply. That is objectively good, as long as you don't, like, as long as the earth-shattering technology that you're creating and, you know, using and giving yourself monopolistic control over, as long as those technologies have other theoretical uses than just imperialism, it's fine. It's just kind of interesting. I am actually curious. One thing that I'm curious about is, I'm curious. I feel like this is a natural human characteristic. I don't think this is a product of, like, modern, like, colonial and neo-colonial mindsets. But I think that it's kind of interesting how much people want, in theory, at least. People really like the aesthetic of taking a, you know, empty wilderness and converting that empty wilderness into a livable space for themselves and their, you know, their people. Like, I think that it's kind of interesting how kind of universal that is. And it makes sense, right? Like, we colonized the Americas by walking from Africa to South America via Kamchatka. We walked. That's how we got there. And I'm using colonized in the sense of, like, as a species arriving at a place. I'm not talking about colonialism, the modern concept of the power construct over other humans. I'm just talking about the as a species colonizing an area, right? And it's just kind of interesting, you know, like a bacterial colony. It's just very interesting to think of the fact that humans did that like they literally walked. Basically, humans walked everywhere on the planet it was possible to walk to at any point during the history of humans' existence, right? Like, literally, I don't think there's any part of the planet that you can walk to that humans didn't just walk to. Like, the wanderlust is real, right? Like, people associate wanderlust with fucking Kender and shit, and it's like, no, the wanderlust is coming from inside the house. Wanderlust is a very human characteristic. And it's just kind of an interesting one. And I am actually curious how many of the weird, like, bad characteristics of humanity are tied in to an extent to just the inability to walk to a new place and say, fuck you, I'm leaving. I'm creating my own little colony over here with me and a couple people I like. I feel like that instinct of fuck you, I'm leaving is something that has been, you know, really hard to do for most of humanity for most of the existence of humanity, right? Because it's like, you can't realistically do that. Like, if once that's been done 15 times in the place that you live, you can't just walk to a new place because all the walkable places from where you're currently standing already have people that already said, fuck you, I'm leaving, right? But I guess it also, it makes it, I guess it makes it make so much more sense, actually, like, thinking of that as a, like, intrinsic, the fuck you, I'm leaving being, like, a fundamental human characteristic, like, an instinct, an overriding instinct on its own, as opposed to being, like, a product of, like, you know, other emotional stuff, other, like, like the material conditions around them and stuff like that. Thinking of that as an innate drive is actually pretty explanatory for human history in a lot of ways. And it explains a lot about the way that people are so weird. Like, you know, people are like, you know, ooh, you know, fuck you, I want to go to Mars because Mars will be easier because we're going to fuck this planet so badly that it'll be, like, impossible to fix. And it's like, but Mars is way harder to fix than anything we could do to this. Like, you give us 200 years of the worst shit we're ever going to do to this planet, and that's a lot easier to fix than Mars is right now, right? Like, no matter how many nuclear weapons we launch on Earth, it's more habitable than Mars is. Full-on nuclear winter, we cannot see the sun, it's still more habitable than Mars. Right? So, like, it's kind of like a ludicrous premise on its face to colonize Mars because Earth has gotten so bad. Like, it's not a logical thing in any by any stretch of the imagination. But if you presume that people are just emotionally responding to their very natural, innate drive to say, fuck you, I'm leaving, it all just makes so much more sense. Now, that's not to say that you should do it. I'm not saying that we should do that. I don't think that, you know, it's a great idea to go to Mars. On a personal level, I feel like it's going to end very badly for you, and you shouldn't do it. On a societal level, if we actually had the, you know, technology and stuff to do it, and not have every, you know, Mars colony just be a bunch of dead people. Because one thing about Mars that's different than every other suicide colony project that we've ever done, right? Like, the people who crossed over from Kamchatka, those people mostly died, right? Like, most of the time when, you know, a group of people, you know, decides to go colonize a new area of the planet, most of those people are in fact going to just die because they're going from the place that was easier to live in to a place that's harder. The difference with Mars is that in order to live there at all, you need all of the structures that are associated with the majority, the bulk of the people that go there living in the first place. There is no, like, you know, near misses in terms of catastrophes
on a Mars colony. On a Mars colony, if most of the people on the colony die, everybody on the colony is dead, right? Like, because you don't have the ability to just be like, okay, well, most of the people starved this winter, and the rest of the people ate those people, and now it's summer again, and there's not very many people, so we have the ability to, subsist off of what's around us. And it gets easier the fewer people. That's the way that I would describe it. In Earth environments, the fewer people you have, the easier the task of basic survival. Like, on a thriving gets harder the fewer people you have, but basic survival gets easier the fewer people you have. Up to a point, one person is hard. But like, just basically being alive is a lot easier if you have if you have fewer mouths to feed, because the fundamental thing that's killing you is attrition, right? Like, attrition of we need X number of calories to survive, and there's only Y number of calories in the environment. So if, we don't, the limited resource aspect, right? Whereas with Mars, the problem isn't actually limited resources. It's actually kind of the opposite. It's that you have to, there's not enough resources for a single person to survive unless the collective makes the resources for everyone to survive, right? Like, it's trivial to create enough. It's basically impossible to create enough oxygen for one person to live. But if you meet the threshold to create enough oxygen for one person to live, everybody can live on it, because it's trivial to create 5 times as much oxygen, right? It's almost impossible to create 1 unit of oxygen. Creating 5 units of oxygen is actually really easy. So scarcity kind of like has this weird flipping where the scarcity is tied to lack of people. Anyway, it's an element of modern economies that is just kind of an interesting component of the world. And so anyway, so that's kind of an interesting element of, like, if one person survives in the Arctic, that one person can actually survive and meet up with other people and help them survive 50 years later, right? They're probably not going to be alive 50 years later, but they might be. They might literally be alive 50 years later, because people live potentially a pretty long time. They don't consistently live very long, but anyway, just kind of an interesting dynamic. This is what happens when we get too many sharks. We get too many sharks, and I just start going off about, the hypothetical dynamics of colonization and there. Yeah, one of the things that's kind of interesting about that, like, fundamental, like, sort of like expedition instinct, also known as the fuck you, I'm leaving instinct, is that even once it stopped being possible to do, people kept pretending that it was still a thing, right? Like, you can't, create an expedition to uncharted wilderness pretty much any time since the invention of writing, because we've had basically the entire planet colonized. Except Antarctica, obviously. But outside of Antarctica, we've basically had the whole planet colonized for most of this time. I guess there's some places that we didn't. Like, we didn't have... I think we didn't have Greenland colonized for a very long time. That was, like, within the last 1,500 years or so. So we had writing when we first colonized Greenland, probably.
Or at least successfully colonized it. But despite the fact that, like, the colonization of the expedition variety of, like, just going out into the going out into the unknown being basically, like, impossible just on a purely mechanical basis because there's already somebody living everywhere. Despite it being impossible, it is still, like, an extremely popular narrative anyway, which I guess to me is just kind of interesting that, like, it's such a powerful idea within the psyche of humanity that even when, like, it's obviously not been a thing for pretty much the entirety of recorded history, outside of a few, like, very niche cases, like maybe Iceland and Greenland. Like, in terms of that kind of colonization, I guess, like, the is it the Maori? The Maori might be a very specific group, but Indo-Pacific groups that went around in boats to all the islands, like, they still were doing it for a pretty long time. They were probably colonizing new lands, certainly into, like, AD territory, if not, like, within the last 1,000 years, which they might have been doing it within the last 1,000 years too, for all I know. I don't really know the history of like, how long it took to get all the islands in Southeast Asia that are, I guess not all of them are populated still, but the ones that are currently populated, all populated. But so there's a tiny bit of that, but there's not very much. So we have a long expeditionary history as humans, but most of the people that we credit with those expeditions are not really very expeditionary. They're just, like, they're just doing holy wars. It's mostly crusades. Like, the America Project is, like, pretty clearly a crusade, mechanically. Like, it's not, like, super well hidden. It's so funny, having played, like, Crusader Kings 2 a bunch and Crusader Kings 3 a decent amount as well, but having played, like, the feudalism simulators and seeing, like, the yes, you know, if you know, here's how this crusade mechanic works. You are basically given carte blanche by your religious leader to just steal land from these people in this place that your religious leader wants to control. That's what we're given here. And then you get, like, the Treaty of Tortoisai and go, oh yeah, no, this is totally not a crusade. They get this Treaty of Tortoisai. It's like, yeah, definitely, you know, this is not a crusade. What are you talking about? Where'd you get that idea? Oh boy. Well, we'll get there eventually. How are you still alive? Jeez. Could you stop? Could you stop with the whole being alive thing, please? There we go. Whew. took out another shark. So we now have... Wow, we moved so far. We're all the way to the southeastern corner now. Jeez. Have we killed all the bosses now, maybe? We've taken out 3 bosses. God, it's already 11:24. I know I started a little late, but I only started like 15 minutes late. I guess when I was regularly waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and starting as soon as my wife walked out the door in the morning, you know, I had a lot more time before 1 o'clock. You know? I feel like there might have been a slight difference in the amount of time that I had in stream when I had from, you know, 6:30 to onward instead of 9. And that might end up starting back up again sometime in the near future. I've been very, very tired recently. And, you know, who knows what it is. Could be COVID again, could be any number of things. But regardless of what it is, it's gone now. I've finally kicked it. So I'm going to be able to get a bunch of stuff done around the house, but also I'll be able to wake up consistently early on. I guess, honestly, part of the reason that I was so tired was probably just because I was so socially tapped out, because I had to deal with so many difficult appointments. I had, like, multiple different angles of, like, pain-in-the-ass shit that I had to deal with going on simultaneously. Like, nothing super major necessarily, but a lot of it was very stressful. Like where it's like I'm having meetings that I know that there's going to be antagonism in, and even in meetings where I'm not expecting antagonism, there ends up being antagonism. Like really easy stuff, just going sideways in such a crazy way. Like, you know, doctor's visits that should be like very simple, like matter-of-fact events, having like, you know, not about something super major, just like something that again should be very simple, being like, oh, okay, this person is recommending Joe Rogan documentaries as a primary medical source. This is like not actually a doctor. What the fuck is happening? Right? Like, you know, this person's giving me pieces of paper with Joe Rogan's name on it. Right? Like fully insane shit like that. Where it's just like, okay, this should just be a nothing burger of an event. This interaction should be nothing. And then, you know, it's, you know, kind of a pain in the ass, have to get up early or whatever to do this thing, have to like interrupt my schedule. Like, it's not, you know, great to have to do an appointment on the best of times, but then having it be like, oh, okay, so in addition to this being, you know, just kind of like a minor nuisance, it's also made worse by the fact that like this person is just inexplicably insane. And then that influences every other appointment that you have for any time that you have to talk about this thing, because it's like, okay, well, why do I need a second opinion? Okay, I need a second opinion because the last doctor told me that plants were poisonous, and that they were killing me. So I need not a second opinion, I need like a first opinion. And like, okay, make sure that you have the documentation that this person gave you so that you don't sound like a psychopath when you tell them that your doctor was recommending Joe Rogan as a medical source, because, like, that's an insane thing to say, and I don't know that I would trust a patient who told me that. And maybe if I was in the medical field, I would, because those are these people's colleagues, so presumably they know that such people exist, and I didn't have any reason to know that going into them. But, but yeah, we're mostly past the stuff where we need to actually deal with that kind of stuff. We're not quite past it. I have potentially some conversations that I need to have with some people. I'm thinking about. I'm feeling like I should probably have a communication with somebody in a position to make actual decisions about some of the interactions that I had with the medical system in the last couple of months, because it's just like, this is unacceptable. And I'm not even talking about the Joe Rogan guy, because that's a private medical practice. They're not going to do shit about that guy. But I mean, maybe they would actually. I'm not sure. I mean, a doctor telling the patient that plants are poisonous. That's like, you can probably lose your medical license for that, right? Like, the source of all of your problems is that plants exist? Like, that's gotta be something that you can lose your license for, right? There has to be a limit to how bad the advice you give your patients is. Anyway. But that isn't even the thing that I was referencing. But we have... Okay. But we'll see. But it's, something that's very fun. Fun is maybe the wrong word, but something that's very interesting is like when you realize that you're going to have to do some research on a topic because you don't know enough about it to meaningfully interact with it. You're like, I know that this is like crazy, right? Like, this is obviously not correct. Like, I know that. But, like, how crazy is it? Is, like, a little bit up in the air, where it's like, okay, well, is there something... The thing they're telling me is crazy, but is it possible that they just don't know what they're talking about, and there's actually, like, a very reasonable thing that they could have told me that would have alleviated my concerns if they had told me that, but they didn't tell me that because those particular people were idiots. But on a systemic level, the thing that they were saying to do, like the actual action case, was a reasonable one. That's a thing that happens very commonly. It's very common to have, like, a person say a thing, and then the reason that they give for that thing, a thing that sounds on its face kind of silly and ridiculous, and then their explanation for it is terrible, and you go, that doesn't sound right. This is some insane shit that we shouldn't be doing. And then you look at the actual reason why it's done, which is not the thing that they said that it was when they were talking to you, because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They're just some random idiot. And you're like, oh no, actually this makes sense. This is reasonable. This is actually very common in Singapore. In my experience, I run into a lot of things in Singapore where, the people responsible for explaining to me that I need to do a thing don't have any ability to do that because, generally speaking, Singaporeans are really good at following orders. If they're just told to do a thing, they just do it. They don't ask questions about why. That's a I don't even know that I'd want to call it like a stereotype or an exaggeration, honestly, because it's really not. Like, systemically, Singaporeans are very much like, they will complain about the system, but they won't disobey it to a large degree. And they won't complain about it to anybody in the system. So it's like the least useful, like the mindset that Singaporeans have about like how to deal with problems, like on a systemic level, is insane. It's like the worst possible combination of factors of like, you know, bitching about it to the people who don't know, who are not involved and can't fix it, and never complaining to the people who can. The number of times that I have called to complain about a thing that is a meme, like where like Singaporeans are constantly bitching about this thing, right? They're continuously complaining, and been told by the relevant authority, we've not received any complaints about this. And I go, how? How have you not received any complaints about this? And the relevant authority might be lying, right? They might be lying about how many complaints they've received, right? But if you were to ask anybody, hey, did you complain about your experience with, you know, getting a driver's license? Did you complain about the fact that the test is, like, ambiguous, written by a lunatic, and, like, full of typos and mistakes? Did you complain about that 10 years ago when you took that test? And everyone to a person will say, no, I didn't complain to anybody about it. I just retook the test until I lucked into getting it correct. It's like, well, why didn't you complain? So I believe that even if they are not technically correct in saying that they haven't received any complaints, because they probably have received some, I feel like a lot of the times when I'm told we haven't received any complaints, they might not be technically, but they are spiritually correct, in the sense that it's like a couple of people might have complained over the years, but basically nobody did. But people complain about this stuff all the time, like interpersonally, and it's just so funny because it's like, complain to someone who's a decision maker so that the decision makers even know that it's a problem, because I feel like a lot of the time, like, I feel like part of it is that there's like a very strong fear of retribution that people have that I think is partially justified because, like, I don't know, it's not like Singaporeans aren't petty, right? Like, so I wouldn't put fear of, if you're looking at like complaining about your boss to someone else in the corporate hierarchy, right? Like complaining to HR or something. Like, I don't know that I'd want to complain to HR in Singapore. Or anywhere for that matter, but particularly in Singapore, because HR is not your friend. HR is there to protect the company. It's not there to protect you. There's a reason it's called human resources. It's not resources for humans. It's the place where they manage the human resources. You are the resource they are managing in human resources. To be clear, a lot of what HR does is basically protect the company from legality problems in a wide variety of ways. But that's like the primary purpose of HR is to liaise with legal to prevent legitimate complaints from being brought, and if those legitimate complaints are going to be brought in the first place, to prepare the company to combat those with something, like to basically make up something to use against you, right? Because they know that you're going to be a problem eventually. Because, you know, they did something illegal to you, right? Like, the company did something illegal, and so now you're a problem because they have committed a crime against you. That's just how corporate architecture works. Anyway, so like, I wouldn't want to complain to HR, but I actually feel pretty comfortable complaining to the Singapore government. And of anybody, I am like the least. You know, I'm a PR. They can just kick me out of the country if they get sick of my bullshit. They don't need an excuse to kick me out of the country. I'm a PR. I am here at their leisure. I ain't a citizen. You know, like there's no protections in place for one such as me. You know. From like actual like, if someone in the government got pissed off enough at me that they would actually try to do retribution, if they could just do it, right? Like, not anyone in the government could kick me out of the country, obviously, but if the administrative state for whatever reason thought I was a problem, they can just get rid of me, right? And so I have legitimate reason why I would be potentially concerned about, retribution when I'm calling up their phone numbers and saying, this system that you have set up is extremely stupid. Why is this set up this badly? This is a huge problem. This is a huge issue. And the so here's like a classic example of just kind of the weird madness of this. I live in Singapore, right? Like, I have lived in Singapore for many years, and because I live in Singapore, I'm basically just like not able to get my license renewed in the United States, or at least I wasn't for a long time. But I actually, because my mother got sick, I actually got the opportunity to do it, because you have to be a resident of a state to get a driver's license in the United States, because it's handled by the states. It's not handled by the federal government. And so anyway, so my Florida driver's license was expired, and it expired because I couldn't renew it, and I couldn't get it transferred to be a Singapore license because once you become a PR, you can't convert your license anymore for some weird reason. It seems like PRs are the kind of people that should be doing that. Like, why would a person who's not a PR have any desire to convert their license? Because they're not like here permanently, and they can drive here without. It's weird. Like, it doesn't become. You don't need a local license until you become a PR, but you can only convert your license before you become a PR. So, like, before you become a PR, you have to like go through a legal process that you do not need yet, that will only become useful once you become a PR, because, again, you can just use your foreign license as long as you're not a PR. The whole thing is very strangely set up. It's some bureaucratic nonsense that I don't know that that's a Singapore-specific thing. I would imagine that it's not. I think that that's like a common, like, oddity of the bureaucracy. It's like when you actually would want to take advantage of a mechanic, you can't do it anymore. And look, did my wife tell me before I got PR that I needed to convert my license to a Singapore license, and that was the thing that I needed to do before I got my PR status, because I wasn't going to be able to do it later, and that, it just needed to get done? Was I told this? Absolutely. Was I a dumbass 22-year-old and said, oh yeah, sure, that's a thing that I need to do, and then proceed to not do it? Yes. Can I blame the ADHD for that? Technically, I could, but I'm not going to. I'm going to instead blame being a dumbass 22-year-old. I'm not going to blame the fact that... Now, would I still do that today? It could happen. Is it likely to happen? Yes, actually, it's not unlikely for me to forget a piece of paperwork for way too long, and
lose the window of opportunity for getting it done. That is actually a thing that has happened to me. Don't judge me. Whoa. But see, here's the difference. So when I do it now, it's because I have severe ADHD. When I did it then, it was because I was a domestic team. We'll pick and choose our reasons. We'll pick and choose our excuses according to my whims. Are any of these excuses particularly inspiring or uninspiring for that matter? No, none of these are particularly interesting, but that's fine. It doesn't need to be. Alright, we're going to try to burn through these. We have one that's moving. It might move in range to attack us, it might not. And the fact that it's rotating around there is actually great for me, because it rotating all the way to there means that it's now well out of position for the others. God, it's almost noon? Jeez. We've spent the entire stream in the shoals. This is true madness. God, no wonder I'm talking about random topics. No wonder I'm just going off about random bullshit. And who can blame me? I need to talk about something. Alright, I think... Do we want to do the Lincoln first, or do we want to do the bonus dungeon first? I don't know which one I want to do first on this thing. How many photos are there? Quite a few. Oh shit, I wasn't paying enough attention. I had so much time to heal. Okay. I don't really like the way that that one's tracking, but it's technically going south, so I'm just playing a 2D like dodging game. God, I wish I remembered what that developer was. There was a fun developer who made they were like student developers. Like many years ago, I was at a convention, and God, this was so many years ago. It's 2004. It was definitely pre-COVID, so this was like latest 2019. So it's at least 5 years ago, right? So at least 5 years ago, I went to a convention, and they had this cool kind of like asteroids, like you're shooting stuff, and there's just like a bunch of different enemies and stuff like that you're dealing with. And the whole mechanic of the game, the whole thing to the game, was this mechanic where you can slow down time. And I was really enjoying the game, but I refused to use the mechanic where you slow down time, because, it's me, right? And I was really enjoying it, and the developers were like watching me play, and were like, but why are you not slowing down time? And I eventually got good enough at it that when I was playing, I actually got the high score. Which makes sense, because most of the people who were playing it, sure, they're slowing down time, but they're also playing it like once, and I just kind of kept going back to it because it was fun. I was enjoying it. Let's see. Whoop. I should have taken the opportunity while I was there to get some people's cards. I am remarkably bad at networking. It's not a talent that I have.
it's very unfortunate that networking is like the primary like indicator of success just generally. Like networking is the skill. Like more so than anything else, I think. I can't think of any skill that is more useful in a person's life than the ability to network with people effectively. This is both like professionally, socially, whatever have you, right? Like the ability to know who you know and to manage your time and energy in a way that you maintain the relations with people you know and think of those people at the appropriate times to either be like, oh, this is an opportunity that would be useful for this person that I know who has this skill set, and get them in contact with people, or like just know what they're up to so you know what opportunities they are even around. If that makes any sense? Where it's like, oh yeah, this person is like is doing this thing, right? Anyway, networking is a very powerful skill. It's very, very useful on so many levels. And it should be something that people learn in school. I don't know how you learn it in school, like on a formal level, but there's some degree of, like, I think that the issue is that, like, when people, because I'm pretty sure that I had some sort of classes that were technically related to networking at some point in my schooling. Because, like, when you're really young, they do stuff like, you know, oh, here's how to write a formal letter or whatever, right? And that's useful if you're ever going to write a formal letter, but, you know, 20 years later, when you would write your first formal letter, computers have been invented and people are writing emails, which didn't exist when you learned how to do a formal letter. So what a formal letter looks like has fundamentally changed. And also you can just Google a template online. But the stuff that you don't learn is like, okay, well, when should I be sending emails? You know, how do I maintain these professional and social contacts in an increasingly, you know, separated world? How do you do that? That's a complicated question. I feel like people didn't have to talk about it quite as much in the past. It wasn't like as critical as a skill set because part of it was kind of assumed. A lot of it was not assumed in terms of like, oh, it's assumed that people will have this skill set, but assumed that people would be in situations where it's actually really easy. Like networking, if you have a third place, is actually really easy. Like, you know, like the obvious like example is I have a lot of family members who are boat people who, you know, spent time at boat clubs. And so when I was like a little kid, much less when I was a teenager, but like when I was a really little kid, I was in like a lot of rooms with people who are just doing casual networking continuously, where it's just like, you know, oh yeah, you know, I'm working for this company, I'm working for this company, you know, oh, that's interesting that your company does this thing, that this exists. You know, that would actually be potentially useful for, you know, for my company. Like just meeting people and networking with them was something that was built into the social environment that I grew up in. But as an adult, I've never been in a space like that. I've never been in a space, really, where people are casually talking about, you know, whatever the fuck they are talking about. There just aren't like those kinds of social spaces as much anymore. And I think part of it is because of the fact of desegregation. Because basically when people desegregate, when these spaces were kind of to a large degree forcibly desegregated, all the racists didn't want to be in them anymore because they couldn't just bitch about black people. Which is, I'd never heard anybody bitching about black people in the spaces that I was in, but those spaces that I was in also still exist, right? Like I have uncles who are still in those same entities, but a lot of those spaces didn't allow women to be members, right? Like my grandfather was a member of a country club, and when he died, my grandmother wasn't allowed to go to the meetings and stuff that she was basically running because she was like a hugely important person in the country club because she was, you know, very good at organizing stuff, and very good at she was very, very critical to the fundamental runnings of the whole place. And then they basically just kicked her out because her husband died, and she wasn't allowed to be a member because she's a woman. Just wild shit, right? Wait, weak? Oh my god, everybody's... How long have you been weak? My whole party is weak. And I can't cure it because I can't cast underwater. Oh, that's so funny. So we could go into the Lincoln and cast Cure Weakness, but I'm not going to because I don't... God damn it. I simultaneously do not want to, and that's the only excuse that I need. It's a pain in the ass. I basically want to just clear this without leaving. In just one go. I don't want to remind myself. I don't want to have to start thinking again, and then go back to not thinking for the last bit of this. I want to just get this done. So it'll take longer this way, but it will be less of a pain in the ass for me, which is what is important. Okay, I've got that one done. So this one can also one-shot me. That was dangerous. Taking my fingers off the keyboard while I'm about to dodge an attack. Okay. Oh. Alright. So, we are saving. We have a few of them left, but not that many. That was a dumb idea. I got so lucky there. I got hit like... I think basically everyone except Silveria got tagged there. I deserved to get hit there too, actually. Alright. We're all fine. Look, I'm not being lazy, I'm being impatient. They're different. They are different things. You know, it's very funny, actually. When I was a kid, I had like my own specially crafted definition of the word lazy to describe my lack of interest and desire in doing certain kinds of things. It basically my impatience, general dislike of doing a thing the slow way when I could do it a much harder way that is that's faster. You know, things like just running places
instead of walking places, or any number of other, like, taking a direct route that is, just less comfortable, for a variety of random reasons. That kind of thing I would refer to as, like, my particular breed of laziness. And it's very funny because, I don't know how, as I was calling attention over and over to my extremely severe ADHD, as I'm codifying terms to describe it and telling people about it, I have no idea how it is that any of the many people that I talked to who professionally were experts in the concept of ADHD did not go, hey, maybe this kid has ADHD. It's so funny. It's so funny. I would love to talk to some of those people. Not to, like, accuse them of anything. I just, like, I want to talk to some of my old teachers. And just go, hey, do you remember me? I'm just, like, curious. Like, were there conversations about how ADHD I was at the time that, like, were, for whatever reason, for whatever bizarre, like, cultural reason at the time, were deemed, like, okay, well, clearly this kid has, like, extremely severe ADHD, but we're going to pretend that he doesn't. Like, what is happening? What was happening there? And the other question is, like, was it just one of those things where people at the time were just like, oh yeah, no, this kid's just, like, because I feel like in the internet age, it's easy to forget how, like, completely unaware people were of what was at the time described explicitly as mental illness, right? Like, ADHD was not a neurodivergence. ADHD was a mental illness. It was, you were sick. There was something very wrong with you if you had ADHD, and it needed to be chemically fixed, because otherwise you'd be a menace to society or whatever, right? Like, that was the idea at the time. And I'm curious if there was an element there of, like, this kid is too functional to be mentally ill, even though I was clearly not functional at all. But there were excuses for why I wasn't functional. I also had the insomnia, and attitude problems. I actually did have attitude problems. There was a problem with my attitude. There was a problem with my attitude. But even though there was a problem with my attitude, I don't know, man. I feel like a lot of the problems that I had that were tied to my attitude, I wouldn't just look. The attitude problems that I had as a teenager are not that dissimilar to the attitude things that I have now, and I wouldn't call them a problem today. The reason that they were a problem then is that, the environment was much more severe, because, like, nobody takes children seriously. Like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we've really improved a lot on, like, in terms of, like, being vaguely culturally aware of, like, even if, like, obviously not everyone gets the benefits of that, but, like, we are vaguely culturally aware of the idea that, like, yeah, kids should be able to set boundaries. Can kids set any boundary they want whenever they want? No, that's not reasonable, right? They are a child. They're not a person. But yeah, I went there. Kids ain't people. Kids. But
but kids being able to set boundaries at all with adults and not to just have to obey and worship anything that an adult says is that was not how I grew up. That was, in my house, that was how things largely worked. But outside of my house, that wasn't how things worked, even with my parents. It's not like my parents understood the concept of boundaries. My parents were just chill, right? Like, the idea of, they don't have a desire to do, weird shit that's just gonna hurt me for the sake of it. And they weren't particularly, they didn't have a reason to set to basically make me do a thing that I didn't want to do that I should have been able to say no to very often. I can't remember any examples of my parents, telling me to do a thing that I should have been able to say no to and I couldn't say no to. I don't remember my parents ever doing that. But it was culturally expected. That was interesting. It was culturally expected that other adults could set those boundaries of just okay, you're going to do this thing because I said so. So that's not setting boundaries, but you know what I mean. They're just being able to just dictate to me how things are going to happen without any, recognition of my basic humanity. And so it is nice that is a thing that is sort of recognized culturally now. Because it legitimately just wasn't part of... I just realized I'm casting Shared Life. What was the spell that I couldn't cast because I was on... I just now noticed. Can I just cast whatever I want now? Wasn't I trying to cast a spell and I couldn't because I was underwater? I just now noticed I can cast spells. That is... very funny. I'm a very talented individual. Anyway, so I'm just curious, how much of the shenanigans of the many diagnoses that I got over the course of my childhood to try to explain my behavior were literally just, we don't want to describe what this actually is because that's a pain in the ass and doesn't fit into our ideological understanding of what this means. Because there was a lot of really weird shit when I was a kid, okay? Legitimately weird stuff. I remember, and this isn't about me, this is about another person that I knew. But there was a person that I knew who, I knew them as an adult, and they were kind of just, told their whole life that they were mentally handicapped because there was a huge gap between their literary and linguistic and just language skills and their math skills. And this gap was treated as oh, well, you're mentally handicapped. You've got a severe, deficit of your math ability. But they were well above average in math. Their scores were very different because they had insanely good reading comprehension and all of the stuff tied into what am I thinking of? Phonics? Is it phonics? Is that the... But basically just reading, writing, English stuff generally was so crazy that despite the fact that they had objectively good scores in math, They were told for like years by the public school system, oh yeah, you're mentally handicapped. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm mentally handicapped. I'm a fucking genius, right? But that's not the way that they internalized it, right? They internalized it as, oh, I'm not very smart because I'm super fucking smart. Like that was literally, we're still doing it. We're almost done, hopefully. Hey, some of these are dragon sharks. It's dragons. One could be, thinking that I'm back in Dragon Sand. One could be forgiven for coming to that conclusion. But yeah, we're almost done with it. Sadly, I'm gonna have to come up with a stream for I'm gonna have to come up with like a new title for this stream. What did I title it? I don't even remember. Something about the Lincoln, right? Or like robots or something? I don't even know. I don't remember what I called it, but... Oh, well, you know what? Perfect then, actually. That's actually a perfect title for what this entire stream is going to end up having been, because we still have about 30 of these left. I am still weak. I could try to just do the bonus dungeon and see if I can cure weakness. So wait, I can't cast cure... I can't access the cast menu while I'm underwater, but I can cast spells with a hotkey. That's pretty funny. Oh shit. What? I hit up instead of not hitting anything. Wait. Are we at the edge? Why is it asking me to leave this Fuck. It keeps asking me if I want to leave the shoals. Well, we're gonna get there. That seems appropriate. Anyway, yeah. When I was young, people's understanding of basically anything regarding mental health was totally batshit. Let's see. We've got sharks. We'll get them eventually. Though, I guess it does make sense. Being able to cast the spells via hotkey, but not being able to pull out my spell book makes a degree of sense, just because, it is a book and we are underwater. It might, damage the paper a bit to just pull that out willy-nilly. That was very dumb of me. Well, you know what? It's fine. We got 2 of them parrot. We have just 1 giant shark here. We can clear this one out. Nice. We got the triple para. Okay. So how many more do we have to kill? Like 10? I should have hotkeyed Cure Weakness before it came down. Okay. We're all set. Jump. Boop. Shit, we hit the ground.
shit. These attacks are desynced in a way that's uncomfortable for me. How dare you? Alright, we're going after the others. There we go. They're synced again. Not for long. They were semi-synced for a while. Jeez, I'm fucking this up bad. I'll try to focus the piranha shark. Fuck. Fine. But yeah, I'm doing a bad job with this pole. I should probably just go back and kill that giant shark and save. Okay, we've now got that one dead. Okay, I think we should be fine here. Okay. So, we can save the game. Cleared through 3 of them, question mark. This one might still be alive. Or rather, it might be unparalyzed, but it's not. Okay. Okay, we didn't land. We still have about 8 in this pack. It looks like we've got this one solo for now. Let's just walk into that. We're going to save this now that we've separated them a bit. I'm going to dive this one, and we're going to see if I can fight this one while pulling some of the others. It looks like no, it's too far away to do that. Okay. Well, we're almost done. It's taken an eternity, but we're getting close to the finish line. I don't think there are any bosses left. So we should be okay. And I think we'll finish before 3 a.m. Which is probably good. Okay. Okay. It's gonna be so funny, like, going back to being probably fairly dominant. Once I get out of here, because I'm going to be able to equip my armor. And it's just going to have very funny results. There we go. Because, what is my... I have 41,000 vitality instead of like 900,000. 41,000. No, that's the wrong character. I have 23,000 vitality instead of 900,000. mind-boggling. Okay. You know what? Oh shit, it's behind me! It's right behind me, isn't it? This is a bad idea. Okay, I don't know why I did that to myself. I just walked into the ground. I'm like, oh, that'll be fine. It's like, no, it won't. It can one-shot me. And then it one-shot me. Alright. Sometimes the thing that will predictably happen happens predictably. Fuck, 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 fuck. It's so sad. It's so sad. I'm gonna try to separate these more. Okay, no, these are separated. I'm gonna dive out. And that one de-aggroed, so I need to go dive it. Okay, this is actually a really ugly setup. Oh, fuck me. Man up. I need to be basically above them at all times so that I don't automatically hit up and go down to the skybox. Not the skybox, the flybox, I guess. I guess in this context I'm just going straight down to the ground. But... Alright. Let's save it up. We have two over here. We have a piranha and a piranha. So either of these can one-shot me. I'm going to dive this one out here, which I should not have gone down. This is a dragon shark. And this is a great setup, actually, as long as I can make it work. Because the dragon shark is... You know what? I'm not going to go for the dragon shark yet. Let's go for this one, because I've now separated them enough that this piranha shark is alone. And then I can probably get the dragon shark alone off the back of this. And then I can get the last one. And I think this is the last ones in the zone, because I've been rotating south with this and haven't run into any more. So I think we're done. I need to get higher. Let's go save. It's the last enemy on the entire map, I believe. There's one little cluster of sharks somewhere. I'm gonna be very sad. We got the para. Let's go. Okay. Done. I think we finished the map. I think the whole map is cleared now. Let's see. Whew. So we're basically just going to rotate around the edge here a little bit, make sure that we haven't missed anybody. I don't think that we've missed anybody over here. There's a decent chance that we've missed a pack down south here, or that one of them has wandered out.
into the southern plain there, because I haven't been into the southern plain since I did this. And it doesn't look like it. I think we're clear. Oh, good. Okay. We have finished the shoals. So sorry about that. I hope that wasn't too deafening. I was not expecting that to happen. So we got a few pearls, and we are now ready to go. I'm trying to remember this bonus dungeon that we have in our inventory. Does anyone know where that exits out? Because if it exits back to here,
I wish I knew.
then I'm happy to do that now. And if it doesn't exit out to here, then I don't want to do it now.
Jump.
Is the plate armor that I can't identify? I don't think I can equip a bow. You can't use Tanir's bell underwater? Very sad, very sad. Okay.
Who knows?
What was I doing? Right, I was going to look for my bow. Can I equip this bow underwater? No. Okay, so I actually might just not be able to equip anything underwater now that I think about it. Oh, I can't use the temple in a bottle underwater. Huh. Okay. Yes, I can. I just have to right-click on my portrait.
What lies ahead?
Alright, so I'm going to leave immediately. Okay, that does just bring me back to where I came from. So we're going to reload the autosave. And can I cast spells now? Yes, I can. Okay, we're going to cast Cure Weakness. And we're in the green. I don't know if there's going to be any enemies in here. I actually don't remember the bonus dungeon here at all. I think there's enemies in here, but I actually don't recall the dungeon. I do recall this. It is familiar. I don't remember very much about it, but I do remember its existence. And I think there are enemies somewhere in here, but I could be wrong. Can't open any of the doors. Can't open you. Is there a single door that I can open somewhere? There is a thing right here. Okay. Okay. There are enemies over here. I'm not going to equip my actual armor for right now. So bear that in mind. So presumably... okay. Is there anything over here? No. Okay. This is a door as well. So this is... Hello, Lord Roberts. Venomous Blaster guy. Interesting. So you're actually a boss. Well, good thing that I got you paralyzed in the first shot. Yeah, might not last throughout the entire HP bar, though. I think para doesn't last as long on bosses.
Who wants some?
Lasted long enough. 1%?
Too easy.
It's Cersei, so you are also a blaster guy, but you're not hostile. Interesting. You know what's funny? I actually legitimately do not remember any of this shit. Like, this Might and Magic 7 version of this dungeon, I just don't even remember it. So, I don't know what kind of weird stuff we're gonna get here. Let's see. I don't remember if there's really anything to obtain of note in this whole dungeon, because I just don't even remember the dungeon. It's pretty big. I think this is a very cool, like, little credits thing to put in. Honestly. Like, I think it's very cool to have, like, the ability to just, like, have, like, an office tour, basically. Because, like, I don't need to be dicking around in here. I don't need to. There's nothing in the game that's telling me, like, oh, well, you better, like, look throughout our entire office. Right? Like, there's no downside. This is kind of a cool thing. There's a switch there. Hit the switch. Never mind. And I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm curious who the guy is that was hostile. Interesting.
No.
It says when tapped, it produces a bell tone. I wonder what the power stands for. Is that for part of the what's her name's quest? Guess we'll find out once we finish this.
Easy.
Let's see. So tomorrow is Thursday, I believe. Which means I think there's a decent chance that we're going to be able to finish up the entire game this week. We've cleared through the shoals, which is a huge pain in the ass of an area. We've got the Lincoln left to do. And then I think we already have enough Philosopher's Stones to do that. So that'll be cool. And then from there, we can see how things go. We can see how it all goes. I'm pretty happy with how the run's been going so far. There's been some ups and downs. You know, some certain portions of the run I felt very, very weak. Other portions of the run, like kind of right now, well, maybe not right now because I'm not wearing my armor, but for For this portion of the run, I feel very, very strong. But I'm also going to be going to the merge endgame stuff, and I don't know how tough that's going to be. The merge endgame stuff might be really crazy. I just don't know. So we'll see how it all ends up going. So I think that's basically the offices. We have one more place to go to here, which might just teleport us away again. Yeah, it just seems to teleport us away. So, can we open these? There's items in there. Oh, this is open now.
Useless.
Okay. So, we took a little tour of the offices. We got an item off of one of the bosses, or at least I assume it's a boss. I certainly hope it's a boss. Interesting. We don't have this open. Does anyone know how this dungeon works? This is also not open. So I've opened some parts of this, and I have no idea. Was I supposed to find random switches? Oh! Okay. I don't know if this is gonna open them all or if I have to do like specific combinations, but we're gonna try it. There we go. I don't think there's anything in these two, so I'm just gonna ignore the other one. We need to move at least a little bit fast because we're currently getting close to 3 o'clock.
Useless.
And I think we have a chance of dying at 3, so we want to make sure that we're getting out of here in a timely manner. I think the dungeon completion for this is counting all of the peasants. Is this a door that I didn't go through? I think that might be a door I didn't go through. Okay, we are probably going to have to do another save in here right before 3 o'clock. Because it's almost 2. That looks like a door to me. I think that's a door. Can we get through by going this way? No. Is this a secret door? No. Alright. But I think that probably all of these people are counting for the dungeon completion. So that's probably why it's 1%. That would be my assumption. Either way, we probably can get out of here in time, actually. It's 1:16. It's not even 2 o'clock. So we should be able to pop out of here. I don't know if I've missed anything. But if I had missed something, it's probably not anything of particular importance, right? So we can just pop out. And we're back over here. There we go. Okay, so I think I'm going to just end things here for now. Oh wait, we will check our inventory because we've picked up a couple of things. I think we at the very least picked up something off of the blaster guy, right? Did I identify the item from the blaster guy? Oh right, I didn't identify this. It looks like I did identify whatever it is that I got from the blaster guy because I don't see it in my inventory right now. So next time we're going to pop into the Lincoln. We will do a quick change. Get ourselves back into our gear, and I think I am going to keep saving under danger. Do I need to? No, I guess I can save over test. So Next time, we will do the Lincoln, and then we will start progressing through the merge quests. Because I got the impression that we were approaching like the end game of the merge quests just now. The way that she was talking kind of made me feel like, okay, once I do this, I'm going to be like going through a portal to somewhere. So I wanted to get this part done first. So we're going to get this done. We're going to go over. We will hopefully not have anything too time consuming in terms of like collection quests that she's going to ask for from us. And we can proceed onward from there. So thank you for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure stream for you today. I know today was, a little bit off brand, be just like shooting the shit about random nonsense the whole time, because I'm just like sitting here beating up sharks. But I hope that it was enjoyable for everyone. I might put a warning actually like in the description of this on YouTube that this is just sharks and me shooting the shit the entire time. And, like skip to the end. Though I guess you can kind of just like scroll through the thing and you can kind of just see that that's what's coming, what you're in for. Anyway, that's it for now. Later, folks.